The morning sun barely touched the Manhattan skyline when Richard Sterling stood at his office window. At 73, he remained commanding, though the weight of 3 decades showed in his shoulders. On his mahogany desk sat a single silver frame of 5-year-old girl, with bright eyes holding a stuffed cat named Missy. "Good morning, Emma," he whispered, touching the photo gently. "Another day without you." His daily ritual. His private grief. Every morning for 30 years, Richard had begun his day this way, speaking to the daughter, who'd vanished at the grand opening of Sterling Tower, the building that had made his fortune but cost him everything that mattered. A knock interrupted the silence. James, his chief of staff of 20 years, entered carrying files. "Sir, the new housekeeper has arrived. Her credentials are exceptional, 3 years with Mrs. Ashworth, and you know how particular she was." Richard barely looked up. He'd gone through 4 housekeepers in the past year alone. None could meet his exacting standards. Everything had to be precise, ordered, controlled. It was the only way he knew to manage the chaos. Emma's disappearance had left in his life. "How long will this one last? 2 months? I have a good feeling about her, sir. She's different." The woman who entered was 41, with kind eyes and quiet confidence. She wore a simple but elegant outfit, her demeanor neither intimidated nor overly impressed by the opulent surroundings. "Good morning, Mr. Sterling. I'm Sarah Mitchell. Thank you for this opportunity." Richard studied her, briefly sharp eyes taking in every detail as they would in a business negotiation, then returned to his papers with a curt nod. James outlined the requirements: breakfast at 7:30 sharp. "No salt in anything. Mr. Sterling has severe hypertension. The tea must be exactly 80 degrees Celsius. Everything arranged precisely. His dietary restrictions are extensive due to his heart condition." "I understand," Sarah said simply. "I'll make sure everything is exactly as Mr. Sterling prefers." Something about her voice made Richard pause, though he couldn't identify what. There was a warmth there, something he hadn't heard in his home for decades. Over the following weeks, Sarah proved different from the others. She didn't just follow instructions. Mechanically, she anticipated needs with uncanny intuition. The first morning, she placed the newspaper on his left side without being told. Having noticed he was left-handed, she observed his coffee cup preference and adjusted accordingly. One evening, without being asked, she brought Richard his nightly chamomile tea at exactly 10:15, the precise moment. He usually wanted it, though he'd never specified the time. "I noticed in the household logs that you have tea around this time," she explained when he looked up in surprise. Richard found himself strangely moved. "Thank you, Sarah. That was thoughtful." 2 months passed. Sarah remained, breaking Richard's recent record. Richard found himself humming one morning while reviewing contracts an old lullaby he'd sung to Emma. The melody surfaced unbidden, triggered by something he couldn't identify. He stopped abruptly, disturbed. He hadn't hummed that song in 30 years. Small things began catching his attention. The way Sarah held her teacup with her ring finger, slightly curved beneath the saucer, exactly as Emma's mother Catherine used to. It was an unusual habit, one he'd never seen anyone else replicate. Then there was the order she ate her meals when joining staff. Dinner always vegetables first, then protein, then starches. Left to right on the plate. The exact pattern Richard followed, the exact pattern he'd taught Emma when she was learning table manners. One afternoon, Richard invited Sarah to tea in his study, unusual, as he typically kept strict boundaries with staff. "Tell me about yourself. I realized I know very little beyond your references." Sarah's fingers curved beneath her teacup in that distinctive way. "There's not much to tell. I've been working as a housekeeper for 20 years. Before that, various jobs, whatever I could find. I didn't have much education. The orphanage did their best, but resources were limited." Richard's attention sharpened. "Orphanage?" "Sunshine Home, upstate New York. I was there from age 5 until I aged out at 18. Richard's hand trembled slightly, setting down his cup. "What happened to your parents?" Sarah's expression grew distant. "I don't know. I don't remember anything before age 5. The doctor said I had a severe head injury. I was found unconscious at a construction site. When I woke up months later, I couldn't remember my name, my family, anything. The room seemed to tilt. Which construction site? Somewhere in Queens, I think. Why? Just curious. Go on. I had amnesia. No one ever claimed me. The hospital gave me the name Sarah Mitchell. I became a ward of the state. She smiled sadly. Sometimes I have dreams fragments. A garden with roses. A man reading stories. A melody I can't place. But they're just shadows. Richard felt his throat tighten. He'd read to Emma every night in their rose garden. Anything else? There was a stuffed animal. A cat. I had it when I was found. I named it Missy, though I don't know why. Richard's vision blurred. Missy. Emma's beloved cat she'd carried everywhere. Then came the day that changed everything. It was a quiet Tuesday evening. Richard was reviewing quarterly reports when sharp pain exploded in his chest. The papers slipped from his hands. The room tilted violently. His coffee cup shattered on the floor as he collapsed. Sarah was in the kitchen. She heard the crash and came running. While others might have panicked, she moved with practiced calm, checking his pulse, loosening his collar, calling 911 with steady hands. I need an ambulance at the Sterling penthouse. Suspected heart attack. Patient is 73, history of heart disease. She found his nitroglycerin spray and administered it. Stay with me, Mr. Sterling. Help is coming. Just breathe. At the hospital, Richard woke to find Sarah by the window, worry etched on her face. You saved my life, he said quietly. I did what anyone would do. That evening, Richard's nephew, Marcus, arrived, 45, ambitious, expensive suit. Uncle Richard, you scared us. You need to slow down. Let me handle the company. Richard saw through the act. I'll be back next week. Everything stays as is. After Marcus left, Richard noticed how Sarah had remained a steady presence, without pretense or agenda. And that night, he made a decision that would change both their lives. James, he called the next morning, I need you to investigate Sarah Mitchell's background. Everything, especially about her childhood, how she ended up at Sunshine Home. I need to know for certain, because the coincidences were too many. The age was right. The location. The stuffed cat. The habits. Could it be possible? Could Emma have been alive all this time? Richard couldn't sleep. He lay awake making mental lists, the construction site location, the timing, 1993, the amnesia, the scar he'd noticed on Sarah's wrist, crescent-shaped, about 2 inches long, exactly where Emma had cut herself falling from a swing 3 weeks before disappearing, the stuffed cat named Missy, the unconscious habits the teacup grip, the eating pattern, her blood type in medical records, AB negative, just like Emma's, just like his. How many coincidences before they stopped being coincidences? Every morning at breakfast, he studied Sarah's face, looking for traces of Catherine's features, of the little girl he'd lost. Sometimes he caught glimpses that took his breath away. Other times he convinced himself he was seeing what he wanted to see. James returned after 5 days, his face grave. They met in Richard's study behind closed doors. Sir, you should sit down. Just tell me. James took a deep breath. Sarah Mitchell was found on June 24th, 1993, at a construction site in Queens, the Sterling Tower construction site. Your site. She was approximately 5 years old, suffering severe head trauma from a construction accident. The room spun. Richard did sit then heavily. June 24th, the day Emma disappeared. According to police reports, there was a delivery truck accident. In the chaos, a bystander grabbed the injured child and took her to Queens General Hospital. He never gave his name, just left her there. How is that possible? We filed reports. We had Emma's fingerprints on file. I've requested the original files. There may have been clerical errors or databases weren't fully integrated in 1993. But, sir, there's more. Richard looked up, hardly daring to breathe. The little girl had a distinctive scar on her right wrist, crescent-shaped, approximately 2 inches long. The medical report described it as an old injury, probably sustained weeks before the accident. Richard's heart hammered. Emma fell from a swing 3 weeks before she disappeared. 12 stitches. The medical report from 1993, describes a scar requiring approximately 12 stitches. Richard pressed his hands to his eyes. The only possession she had was a stuffed cat. Gray with white patches, the girl called it Missy when she woke up, though she couldn't explain how she knew that name. It was Emma's. Catherine bought it at a craft fair. When no family claimed her after 6 months, she was transferred to Sunshine Home Orphanage. The intake director named her Sarah Mitchell, randomly chosen names. Richard stood and walked to the window. 30 years. Emma had been alive, just hours away upstate, while he'd searched the world for her. How did she end up back here? She responded to our job posting. It appears to be chance? Chance, Richard repeated hollowly. My daughter survives, loses all memory, grows up in an orphanage, and by chance applies to be my housekeeper? James handed him a photograph from Sunshine Home's 7-year-old Sarah with haunted eyes. But those eyes were Catherine's eyes, and the shape of her face was unmistakably sterling. We need DNA confirmation, James said gently. I've contacted the most reputable laboratory in New York. Complete confidentiality. We just need a sample. Obtaining Sarah's DNA was simple. A hairbrush provided the sample. The wait for results felt eternal. Meanwhile, Richard watched Sarah more closely. One afternoon, he heard her humming while dusting. The melody was unmistakable, the lullaby from the music box. The one he'd written for Emma. The one no one else could possibly know. That song, where did you learn it? He asked. She looked puzzled. I don't know. It's been in my head for days. I thought maybe I heard it on the radio. You've never heard it before? Not that I remember. But then again, I don't remember much. That evening, Richard played the music box, listening to the same melody Sarah had hummed perfectly. She couldn't know this song unless some part of her remembered. When the DNA results arrived 3 days later, Richard's hands shook opening the envelope. James stood beside him. Probability of paternity 99.99%. The tested individuals share a biological parent-child relationship. The paper slipped from Richard's fingers. It's her. Emma. My Emma. She's alive. He pressed his hands to his face and wept 30 years of grief and hope finally released. But before he could decide how to tell Sarah, Marcus burst into the study, angry and flushed. Uncle, I've investigated your housekeeper. She's a con artist fraud against elderly clients. He threw down documents, police reports, court records, victim testimonials. Richard examined them closely. The dates were suspicious, the formatting inconsistent with official documents. After 40 years in business, Richard knew forgeries when he saw them. These are fake, he said flatly. You fabricated them. Marcus paled. I'm trying to protect you. You're protecting your inheritance. Richard stood, his voice ice. Here's something you didn't know. Sarah isn't a con artist. She's my daughter, Emma. The DNA test confirms it with 99.99% certainty. The color drained from Marcus's face. Impossible. Your daughter died. She survived. She lost her memory in the accident and grew up in an orphanage. By a miracle, she found her way back to my home. And you just tried to destroy her reputation with lies. Uncle, I didn't know. It wouldn't have mattered. You saw a threat to your inheritance and tried to eliminate it with fraud. You're everything I raised you not to be. Richard's voice was final. You're done here, Marcus. Clear out your office today. My lawyers will contact you about buying back your shares. Get out. After Marcus left, Richard sat alone with the truth. His daughter, found at last after 30 years. Now he had to tell her who she really was. Richard found Sarah in the garden at sunset, tending the roses with careful hands. She looked peaceful, humming that familiar lullaby, unaware her world was about to change forever. Sarah, I need to speak with you. It's important. She stood, brushing dirt from her hands, concern crossing her face. Is it your heart? Should I call Dr. Morrison? No, my heart is fine. He gestured to a bench beneath an oak tree. Please sit with me. What I'm about to tell you will sound impossible, but I need you to listen to everything before you respond. As the sun painted the sky gold and pink, Richard began. He pulled out old photographs. 30 years ago, I had everything. A beautiful wife named Catherine, a thriving company, and a daughter, Emma. She was 5 years old, brilliant and full of light. He showed her the first photograph: Richard, Catherine, and baby Emma. Sarah studied it politely, not understanding yet. We took Emma to the grand opening of Sterling Tower on June 24th, 1993. The celebration was crowded. I took a phone call just for a moment. When I turned back, Emma's hand wasn't in mine anymore. There was a construction accident. A delivery truck lost control. In the chaos, someone grabbed Emma and rushed her to a hospital. He never gave his name, just left her there. Sarah listened, her grip on the bench tightening. Emma had severe head trauma. She was in a coma for 3 months. When she woke, she couldn't remember anything. Not her name, not her parents, not her life. The hospital tried to identify her, but somehow she was never matched to our missing person report. After 6 months, she was sent to Sunshine Home Orphanage upstate. Sarah's face had gone pale. Mr. Sterling, the girl had a distinctive crescent-shaped scar on her right wrist from an injury a few weeks before. Richard gently took Sarah's hand, turning it over to reveal her scar. Emma fell from a swing 3 weeks before she disappeared. The injury required 12 stitches. No, Sarah whispered. The only thing the girl had was a stuffed cat, gray with white patches. She called it Missy, though she couldn't remember why that name felt right. Missy, Sarah breathed. I still have her, in my apartment. Richard laid out more evidence intake records from Sunshine Home dated 1994. Medical reports describing identical injuries. Photographs of young Sarah bearing unmistakable resemblance to Emma. I had a DNA test run. This is from the most reputable laboratory in New York. He handed her the results. 99.99% probability of parental relationship. Sarah, you're not Sarah Mitchell. That name was invented by a hospital administrator. Your real name is Emma Sterling. You're my daughter. You've been alive all this time, and by a miracle, you found your way back home. The document slipped from Sarah's fingers. She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself, her breath coming in panicked gasps. This can't be real. My entire life has been a lie? I'm not who I think I am? You're the same person you've always been. You've just learned the truth about where you came from. I don't remember you, her voice rose. I don't remember any of this. How can I be your daughter if I don't remember being your daughter? Because memory isn't what makes you my child. You are Emma Sterling, regardless of what you remember. Your DNA confirms it. The evidence confirms it. Richard's voice broke. I've searched for you every day for 30 years. I hired investigators, offered rewards, never gave up. I kept your room exactly as it was. I kept all your things. I talked to your photograph every morning. I never stopped being your father, even when I didn't know where you were. Emma pressed her hands to her head, tears streaming. I need to think. I understand this is overwhelming. Overwhelming? She laughed, a broken sound. Everything I thought I knew about myself is wrong. Richard took a careful step toward her. You're Emma. You're my daughter. You're the child I never stopped loving, never stopped believing was alive somewhere. His voice broke on the last words. Sarah looked at him, really looked, and saw the tears on his face, the desperate hope and love in his eyes. Dad? The word came out as barely a whisper. Richard's face crumpled. He opened his arms, and Emma fell into them. 30 years of separation dissolved. They held each other and wept for the lost time, for the pain, for the miracle of finding each other. I'm so sorry I let go of your hand, Richard sobbed. You didn't lose me. You kept looking, and somehow I found my way home. They stood like that as the sun set and stars appeared. Finally, Emma pulled back. I don't remember everything. But, she closed her eyes. This garden, I feel like I've been here before. And that lullaby, I wrote it for you. Catherine and I sang it to you every night. Mother, Emma whispered. Where is she? Richard's face fell. Catherine died 5 years after you disappeared. The grief, she couldn't overcome it. Emma's face crumpled with fresh grief. I'm so sorry. If I'd found my way back sooner... No, this is not your fault. None of this was your fault. Richard gripped her shoulders. Catherine would be so happy to know you're alive. That's what she wanted more than anything. They sat back on the bench, and Richard began sharing stories about Catherine, about Emma's childhood. He showed more photographs, described memories, painted a picture of the life she couldn't remember. Emma touched the photographs as if she could absorb memories through her fingertips. Some stories triggered flashes of recognition, but most remained out of reach. It's frustrating. I want to remember. The amnesia might be permanent, but emotional triggers, familiar places, objects, stories, might help unlock some memories over time. So what happens now? Richard smiled despite his tears. Now we have the rest of our lives to make up for lost time. Now I get to be your father again if you'll let me. Of course, Emma said immediately, then hesitated. But I'm 41. I've lived my entire adult life as Sarah Mitchell. I can't just become Emma Sterling overnight. Take all the time you need. There's no rush. I'm just grateful you're alive. Emma nodded slowly, feeling something she'd never felt before, a sense of belonging, of roots, of connection. All her life she'd felt unmoored. Now, suddenly, she had an anchor. As darkness fell completely, the city lights sparkled around them. Father and daughter, separated by 3 decades and reunited by impossible chance. Emma, Richard said softly. My Emma. You came home, and for the first time since losing her memory 30 years ago, Emma Sterling felt truly, completely home. The press conference was held on a bright October morning at Sterling Corporation headquarters. The conference room was packed. Every major news outlet had sent reporters. Whispers rippled through the crowd as Richard Sterling entered with a woman at his side, no longer dressed as a housekeeper, but in an elegant navy suit. Richard approached the podium with quiet authority. The room fell silent. Thank you for coming. I have an announcement many won't believe at first. 30 years ago, I lost my daughter Emma at the opening of Sterling Tower. She was 5 years old. Despite extensive searches, I couldn't find her. Today, I announce something I never dared hope, for Emma has come home. The room erupted in murmurs. Cameras flashed. Through DNA testing from 3 separate laboratories and extensive verification, the woman beside me is my daughter, Emma Sterling. She survived the accident but sustained severe head trauma, causing complete amnesia. She grew up in foster care with no memory of her identity. Through miraculous coincidence, she came to work in my home, and the truth gradually revealed itself. Emma stepped forward, her voice clear. My name's Emma Sterling, though I've lived most of my life as Sarah Mitchell. I understand your skepticism. I felt the same way. But the evidence is overwhelming. DNA, medical records from 1993, my scar, blood type, physical characteristics, everything aligns. I don't remember my childhood fully, but fragments are returning. More importantly, my father never stopped searching. A reporter called out, What does this mean for Sterling Corporation? Emma will join the company officially, Richard answered. She'll learn the business from the ground up as I did. As my sole heir, she will eventually inherit Sterling Corporation. This is not hasty, it's the restoration of what should have been. After the press conference, Emma and Richard retreated to his office, both exhausted. Emma sank into a chair. That was terrifying. You were perfect. Poised, articulate, honest. 4 months ago, I was a housekeeper. Now I'm an heiress. It's surreal. Richard poured water. The board wants you to start next week, but only if you want to. Emma looked uncertain. What if I'm not ready? I barely finished high school. Neither did I when I started. You'll learn. And you've already proven yourself. You saved my life with quick thinking. You have intelligence and compassion. Those matter more than education. That evening, Richard took Emma to his archive room, a hidden space behind a bookcase. I kept everything here, everything that reminded me of you. The room was filled with boxes labeled by year and category. Photo albums, home videos, clothing, school projects. Emma's eyes widened. You kept everything. How could I not? These were all I had left of you. They spent hours going through albums. Baby Emma, toddler Emma, 5-year-old Emma, all happy, all loved. You were a happy child, Richard said. That happiness had felt impossible that it could just end. Emma studied photos of Catherine. Tell me about her. Brilliant, had 2 PhDs. But she gave up her career when you were born because she wanted to be home with you. She was warm, patient, funny. She loved gardening and classical music. She was terrible at cooking, but never gave up trying. He laughed. You ate everything she made with enthusiasm, even when it was objectively terrible. You had her kindness. I wish I could remember her. She'd understand, and she'd be so proud of who you've become. They watched home videos. Grainy footage showed toddler Emma laughing, playing. In one video, Catherine held young Emma on her lap, reading a story. At the end, little Emma threw her arms around Catherine's neck. I love you, Mommy. You're the bestest. Adult Emma pressed her hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. She sounds wonderful. She was. You were her whole world. When you disappeared, it destroyed her. She survived another 5 years physically, but emotionally, part of her died that day. I'm so sorry I don't remember her. It's not your fault, Emma. None of this was your fault. They stayed in the archive room until late, Richard sharing stories, Emma absorbing them. She learned about family traditions, Sunday pancakes, summer beach trips, Catherine's enthusiastic singing in the car. As midnight approached, Emma said, being here, hearing these stories, it doesn't feel foreign. It feels like I'm finding pieces of myself I didn't know were missing. You are finding yourself, the real you. But I'm also Sarah. Those 30 years shaped me too. You don't have to erase Sarah Mitchell. You're both, past and present. All your experiences made you who you are now. Emma nodded, thinking about identity and memory. There's something I want to do. The foundation you mentioned to help reunite missing children with families. Richard brightened. Are you interested? I want to lead it. I spent 30 years not knowing who I was. I don't want other families to go through that. I don't want other children growing up feeling incomplete. Richard's eyes shone with pride. The Emma Sterling Foundation. Is that too much? It's perfect. Your story gives hope to families who've lost children. It says don't give up. Miracles happen. Then let's do it. Let's turn our tragedy into something meaningful. They shook hands, then laughed and hugged instead. Outside, the city continued its endless motion, but in this space filled with memories, father and daughter began planning how to help others find what they'd found each other. 1 year later, the Emma Sterling Foundation held its grand opening. The building stood tall and modern in downtown Manhattan, housing state-of-the-art technology and compassionate staff dedicated to reuniting families torn apart by circumstance. Emma stood at the entrance in a tailored suit, greeting guests with Richard beside her. The transformation over the past year had been remarkable. She'd learned the business, found her voice, grown confident in her new identity, while honoring the strength Sarah had developed. Among the crowd were families reunited through the foundation's pilot phase, children who'd found parents, siblings reconnected after decades. Each reunion was a miracle, reminding Emma why this work mattered. We did this, Richard said quietly, because of what happened to us. Other families are whole again. Emma squeezed his hand. 23 families in 1 year. I want to help thousands. The ceremony began. Emma addressed the crowd donors, press, families, advocates. 30 years ago, I lost my family in an accident. I grew up not knowing my name, my history, or where I belonged. Every birthday, I wondered if somewhere, someone was thinking of me. Every time I looked in a mirror, I wondered whose eyes I had. She paused, emotion thick but voice steady. My father never stopped searching. That determination, that love, brought me home. But it took 30 years. 30 years of both of us living with a hole that couldn't be filled. The audience was silent, hanging on every word. This foundation exists for everyone still searching. For every parent who wakes up not knowing where their child is. For every child wondering who their family might be. We're here to say don't give up. Miracles can happen. I'm living proof. Thunderous applause erupted. Richard watched his daughter with immense pride. No longer the lost little girl, but a strong woman turning pain into purpose. The Emma Sterling Foundation provides DNA testing, facial recognition technology, psychological support, legal assistance, and investigative resources completely free. We're partnering with law enforcement nationwide, creating a centralized database. We're funding amnesia research, supporting foster care reform, and advocating for better procedures when unidentified children enter the system. After the ceremony, Emma and Richard drove to Sterling Tower, where everything had changed. At its base was a memorial garden with a bronze sculpture of a little girl reaching skyward. Hope's daughter, Richard said, reading the plaque. I commissioned this 25 years ago, hoping you were still out there, reaching up, trying to find your way home. Emma touched the sculpture's outstretched hand. All those years I was living a different life, but something always pulled me toward Manhattan. I applied to work for you without knowing why. Your mother used to say love transcends everything: time, distance, even memory. She believed bonds forged in love could never be completely broken. I think she was right. They stood together in the garden. Do you ever regret it? Richard asked. The life you had as Sarah? Emma considered. I don't regret it. That life made me who I am. The challenges growing up in foster care, working my way through all of that, shaped me. I learned empathy, resilience. I'm both Emma Sterling and Sarah Mitchell, and being both makes me better at running the foundation. I understand what it's like to be lost, to be nobody, to have the system fail you. Richard smiled, eyes moist. Your mother would have loved the woman you've become. They noticed a little girl staring at the sculpture. Is that a real story? She asked her mother. The mother knelt down. Yes, sweetheart. About a little girl who got lost but found her way home again, many years later. And they lived happily ever after? Yes, they did. Sometimes miracles really happen. After visiting Catherine's grave, they returned to the penthouse for dinner. Over their meal, Emma discussed plans. Dad, my passion is the foundation. That's where I can make the biggest difference. The company is your legacy. What if you brought in a CEO you trust? Richard considered. If the foundation is where your heart is, then that's where you should be. But stay on the board. I want your voice in major decisions. Absolutely. They moved to the living room. Emma opened Catherine's music box, letting the familiar lullaby play. I remember something, not a specific memory, but a feeling. When I hear this melody, I feel safe, loved. That feeling saved me in the darkest moments at the orphanage. Catherine and I played this every night when we put you to bed. That emotional memory stayed with you. Emma moved to sit beside him, leaning her head on his shoulder. I love you, Dad. I love you too, Emma. Always have. Always will. As the music box wound down, father and daughter sat together in the home where Emma's story had begun, and after 30 years, where it had come full circle. Emma Sterling had found her way home, and in doing so, she discovered not just where she came from, but who she was meant to become, a beacon of hope for others still searching, still believing in miracles. Because miracles do happen. Emma was living proof. The foundation's motto, inscribed in the lobby, no one should have to spend 30 years wondering who they are. As long as there's hope, we'll keep searching. In the penthouse, the music box fell silent. But the love it represented, Catherine's love, Richard's love, Emma's recovered memories of being loved, would never fade. It would continue to grow, to touch lives far beyond this one family's miracle. Emma had come home, and in coming home, she'd learned that family isn't just about memory or blood. It's about choosing to love, choosing to hope, choosing to believe that what's lost can be found again. Sometimes it takes 30 years. But as long as someone is searching, miracles remain possible.